Welcome to Dear Tay, You Got This. This podcast is a weekly motivational love letter to those who are looking for a change, are currently going through a change, and they need just a little pick-me-up. Tay is a transformation and spiritual coach and author who understands that one small habit over 1 year can create a lifetime of growth. First, we will talk about our topic, and at the end of each episode, I will do a trinity. The trinity is a brag, gratitude, and desire. If you'd like to share your wins, questions, and trinity, please call or text 330-552-7234 to be featured on the podcast. I love hearing about your success and how you are transforming. To learn more about your host, visit her Instagram page, Phoenix of Change. In 2022, I decided that I wanted to be more consistent in my business. And one of the ways that I thought to do that was to grow my TikTok following. Now, at the time, I was making videos, but I didn't feel like they were reaching the audience that I was looking for. So what did I do? I needed to have a catch. So my catch was doing sock videos. And basically what that means is I got on TikTok every morning. I uploaded a video saying, hey, these are my socks for the day, my motivational speech, and then showed everyone my socks. Surprisingly enough, I ended up having over 230 plus pair of socks. And trust me, the collection is still extensive. Now, the 230 pairs grows every single day, every single week, every single month. But I can tell you that one of the places that I ended up getting socks from was Chakra Wonders. When I went on their website, not only did I see that they had socks, but I also saw that they had artwork, mugs, hats, and even some books. Chakra Wonders is an organization that provides products and accessories to those interested in astrology, metaphysics, and self-healing practices. Their mission is to build a resort-style facility structured around modern and advanced holistic and naturopathic therapies for physical and spiritual healing. When you make a purchase, you are helping them build a holistic sanctuary for wellness and renewal. Go to chakrawonders.com and use coupon code DEARTAY to receive 15% off your purchase. That's CHAKRAWONDERS.com. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Dear Tay, You Got This. I'm super excited to talk about this particular episode. And the reason is because it really was prompted from a meditation that I had, and the journal prompt that was given that day. I wrote for about 10 minutes and literally my brain exploded from the amount of thought that really went into this, and the idea that we can learn suffering, that we can learn silence. And I thought it was very interesting as somebody who speaks out for themselves, and at times for others. I thought that it was really important for us to know that when we're going through our healing journey, when we're going through our lives, what it really means to suffer and what that looks like and why that's not okay. My name is Tay. I am your host, and I want to tell you a little bit of a story about how I got into chakra alignments and, just go into how I actually found this method of helping me on my transformation and healing journey. So in October of 2018, I was going through a problem with me and my ex-husband. And we were just going through a really rough time. At that point, we had been married for 3 years, and there had been a lot of things that we were trying to do with our lives. We both wanted to run our businesses, and I wanted to do my business full time. He wanted to do his business full time, but we still had to make rent, or I should say make the mortgage. So, there were a lot of things that were going on within that. But even though we were working for our businesses, it also seemed like we were kind of like in a relationship with ourselves instead of being in a relationship with each other. There became a point where we stopped talking to each other, where we didn't really communicate. And when we did communicate, there were a lot of miscommunications that were happening. And then, there were times where I could tell that something was going on with him, but he didn't really want to talk about it. So we'd basically just like sit and go without. Whereas if something was going on with me, I'd try to talk to him about it, but nothing would come of it. Or sometimes I just wouldn't talk to him about it, and we would still be in this weird like marriage slump. And so one day I was just like, I feel like I need to go to the bookstore and find a book to help, because at that time I was very much into personal development, very much into self-help books. And this wasn't the first time that I had actually picked up a book about marriage, or about how to fix things or anything like that. Like, it wasn't the first time. So I went to the bookstore. We both actually went to the bookstore, and he ended up, I think he may have stayed in the bookstore, but I think he also left and went to another store while we were in this little plaza. And I was looking for this book, and I came across Journaling the Chakras. And I had no idea what this book was about. I mean, I was literally trying to find a book that was going to help fix my marriage and fix everything in it, including my husband. And clearly I did not find that book. But I did find Journaling the Chakras, and it really set me on the path of understanding myself, who I was in friendships and relationships, and really just understanding what it was that I wanted from life. And it was a very interesting um, time, because I remember standing there looking for this book and not finding it for a good 15, 20 minutes. And then right before, I was like, all right, I'm getting ready to go. Like, if I don't find something in the next few minutes, I'm going to go ahead and just go. And this book popped out at me. And it had literally been on the shelf staring at me. I know that some of you guys know what that's like. You go looking for something, and you're like, I know that it's here. And then all of a sudden it just pops out. Like, if it was a snake, it would have bit you. So that's basically the situation with this book. And I went home that day and I read the first chapter, and I was like, oh yes, this book is absolutely for me. So at that point, I started on my chakra alignment. Now, it is a 8-week program where you get to meditate every day for about 10 to 20 minutes, or however long you would like to meditate. And then afterwards, you do a journal prompt for about 10 minutes. And every year that I have done this, I have consistently gotten more insight and more clarity on not only my situation and who I am, but also life as a whole. And I would say that this year is the third, or no, this year actually is the fourth time that I've done this, because I did it in October of 2018. I believe the next time that I did this was in the springtime of 22. I did it again in the springtime of 23. And now I'm doing it again springtime 24. And every time something gets upheavaled, something gets shuffled around, something gets moved, because I'm more in tune with myself. And it's always, always, always a lovely process. And this particular entry is from April 10th. And I basically did my throat chakra meditation, as I normally do when it comes time to throat chakra. And afterwards, I went ahead and went to the question prompt, and it was basically about communication styles as a kid. What did the communication look like in your home? How do you communicate as an adult now because of that? So on and so forth. And I thought this was a very interesting question, as in this book, there's different numbers of questions for each chapter. And this question, I always end up answering every year that I do this. And I always get something different, like literally always get something different. And this time I got something so different that actually prompted this particular podcast because I wanted to talk about learned silence, and how that really keeps us from communicating our wants and our desires. And I just thought that was like so interesting because I had never actually thought of that. So what I want to do is I want to read to you my journal prompt, and then I want to go ahead and talk about it a little bit. Because again, I felt like it was a very interesting take on communication and why I do things the way that I do things. As somebody who really is like, I want to help everyone. I understand that I can't help everyone. I understand that I can't quote unquote fix everyone. Um, but one of the things I really want to do is help. And this kind of sets the scene for why I do the things that I do, why I speak out for other people, why I give people a piece of my mind, things of that nature. Now, I do want to warn you that there is a trigger warning. I don't go into too much detail, but just in case, I want you to just be prepared. Um, so, uh, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and read this journal entry to you. This is a very good question. When I was a child, the adults very much told us to stay in a child's place, not to be an adult conversation. We were able to be open, but we couldn't talk back. We had to follow rules. We got yelled at when we got in trouble. We were consoled when we cried, depending, of course, on what we were crying about. When the truth was told, we were questioned but believed. And I don't know if there was much talking things out for a resolution, but also not quite my way or the highway. I wonder if we saw a lot of problems really. And I mean that in like as kids. I don't know if we actually saw a lot of problems really transpire when we were kids. I know that I didn't really ask for help much because it was treated like a secondhand ask. That kept me from asking for help. I was discouraged from telling anyone I was being molested, which may very well go into me asking for help as well, which I never thought about, kind of like a learned suffering, which as I write it sounds very weird. I know that I've asked for help after, and there has been full, half, or no effort to do so. In the case of not asking, I was learning to be silent. I was learning that secrets were supposed to happen, that there were times and things that shouldn't be shared. It sounds very interesting now to write. A learned silence, suffering in silence and in pain. It wasn't that anyone didn't care, but it was to keep others out of trouble and for things that were actually bad. I wonder if this is why I spoke my mind and or felt as if I had to speak for everyone else. This would actually make a lot of sense because I don't like to see people suffer, nor do I feel that it's necessary, even as an adult. There is no point in it, really. At what point do you draw the line? At what point do you speak out to save yourself from the suffering? Now, I think that there are a lot of people who have learned this. When people are faced with a truth about life or themselves, some people accept it and others deny it. For whatever reason this is, it causes a rift between people, their household, their community, their jobs. Everyone is vying for power, yet no one is wondering how to help or how they can just listen. I feel that everyone's words are important. Just like their eyes are the windows to someone's soul, their words are the window to their mind and how it works. Not everyone is the same. There are some that lie to get ahead and don't worry about the consequences of their actions. There are some who tell the truth, albeit the effects it may have on those around them. Others sit in silence and let things fester because who really cares anyway? In my youth, I was silenced for a long time. So in my adult years and growing up as a teen, I didn't want to be stifled any longer. I realized that I don't have to be. I feel that society has taught us to lay it on gently or sugarcoat our message for the masses. Everyone is wearing kids' gloves to soothe their need to tell the truth, but not harshly. How do we still tell the truth and not hurt those around us and make it so that it is digestible, understood, and changed? That is where I fall. Now, that is some powerful, powerful wording. And I say that because a learned silence, a learned suffering. And as I wrote it this morning, like it really did sound weird. Like when I wrote it, I was like, huh, that's a different way to think about it. Because in my particular situation, the person who molested me, basically told me not to tell anyone. And their course of action was if I told anyone that was happening, they would actually hurt my mom. And as a kid, I mean, I was the ages of 5 to 7 when this happened. And as a kid, like having that kind of threat put on you and caring so much about my mom, who was our caregiver, who was our provider, really made it hard for me to come out and tell someone that this was happening to me. And really, like it was really, really hard. So, of course, now as an adult, I realized that I was suffering in silence. I was suffering in the sense of my innocence being taken away from me and not really being able to openly tell someone else that I was being hurt. Even though I'm not entirely sure at the time I knew that I was being hurt. Did I know it was wrong? Yes. Um, but at the time, I didn't really understand like the severity of what was happening to me. And I think that really, speaks to the culture when it comes to being a victim or, um, being a survivor. It really doesn't come to our brains that this is something that we are learning to do. I think about, something that just came to mind. I think about when people talk about domestic violence and battered women and why they don't leave. And just like anyone, I understand how hard it is to be in a situation where you are stuck and where you feel like there's nowhere for you to go. And, you're being told not to tell anyone, or you're being told that no one cares. What are the reasons why we, decide that we want to suffer? What are the reasons? Are there reasons going into that? Are there reasons just while you're in it, that keep you from really speaking out and telling someone? And just like in this journal prompt, I said others sit in silence and let things fester because who really cares anyway? There are a lot of people out there who feel like nobody cares about their pain. Nobody cares about what they're going through. And then we have a culture now where we go on Facebook and social media and we talk and tell all about our lives, just hoping, desperately hoping that somebody is going to see it and really reach out and care and touch us. Social media, what it has caused is us to really want that attention because we're not getting it, whether it's from the people around us, whether it's from ourselves, anything. Like we're just not getting that attention. So we put it out into the universe, we put it out onto social media, and now it's there forever. Like it's time stamped into the multiwebs, right? Um, and at that moment, they feel seen, they feel heard. And I really, in all honesty, guys, I really have a problem with this. Like, this really bothers me to my core because it's almost as if we feel like in order to be seen, we have to do something extravagant. As a kid and as a teenager, like, I really went out of my way to just be super extravagant. Like, it was borderline attention seeking behavior. And in all honesty, it was because it made me feel good. Like, but if I got attention from it, great, right? But then what would happen as soon as somebody turns their eyes towards somebody who's like acting out or whatever, it's almost like, hey, like, should I really be doing this? Or it's like, oh, you're actually paying attention to me. Um, and then there comes the other part of that where you've put this information out there, somebody comes to you and they want to help you, but then you don't want to talk about it. Um, and that comes from the, oh snap, I asked for help and people are actually looking at me and probably actually give a shit. Let me not burden them with my issues, right? So I really feel like my situation really bred this learned suffering. Like instead of asking for help, um, I just like started doing things on my own. And it's so funny because I talk about this quite a bit when I talk to people about being independent and things like that. Like there's a lot of stigma behind being an independent woman, right? Um, we hear Destiny's Child who, sang independent women, and literally like nobody batted an eye. But then it was almost like as soon as like the tables turned and women were paying for their own shit and like taking care of themselves and they called themselves independent, all of a sudden it became a bad thing. And it's funny because I don't see it as a bad thing personally. But I did realize along the way that there are some things that I need help with. And for me, it was very hard to ask for help. And the reason was because in the cases where I am asking for help, there's always three different roads. I ask for help and somebody's like, yes, I am gung ho for this. Let me help you with this. However, the fuck they're going to help me with that. Right. So they are like full force, pedal to the metal, like, yes, we're doing this. Then you have like the person who's going to like half ass help you. And that's the person who's like, yeah, I can help you do this, but I kind of don't want to. But they help you do it anyway, which is fine. Right. But it's still kind of half ass. And then you have the people who don't help you, which is my no effort to do so category, where you tell somebody that you need help and they're just like, oh, okay. I have a good example of that actually. When I got COVID, I had quite a few people contact me and ask me how I was doing and things like that. And I actually got COVID right around my birthday. It was so stupid. So I had to quarantine. Had to quarantine. And I was talking to some people, and some people had messaged me and asked me how I was doing. I was like, oh, I'm doing okay, dot, dot, dot. And I had one person send me a message and he said, how are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm all right. Like, it just really sucks, like, that I'm stuck in the house, whatever, whatever. Like, it just really stinks. And he was like, oh, okay. He said, do you need anything? And I was like, yeah, actually, like, I could really use some like orange juice and some soup. And I never heard back from him. Like I never heard back from this person. And that's where most people go, why the hell did I just ask for help then? Right? And I feel like this could have been the same situation. Like my particular situation when I was a kid is not the same as everybody else's. When I was a kid and I actually ended up telling my sister under me, I ended up reading a journal entry to her about how I had had sex with this person. Um, and I had told her, I said, you can't tell anybody. And she did exactly the freaking opposite. She went and told my mom. And my mom basically called me downstairs and I was like, shit, like I'm in trouble. Like this is gonna be really like not good. And I go downstairs and she asked me over and over and over again if this is true, and I tell her no. And then she looks at me and she goes, Tay, you're not going to get in trouble. I just need to know if this happened. And I start to cry and I tell her, yes, it did. And I tell her about what happened and, things go from there. And what ended up happening was this is that full help, guys. This is that like, no, we're going to take care of this. We're going to we're going to do something. She took me and my sisters over to her best friend's house at the time. And I sat in her best friend's bedroom and she came in and she asked me questions. And then she like left out of the room and then her best friend came in and she asked me questions. And they were like the same questions and I answered those questions and then they came back out. It's almost like they were like talking with each other about what happened and the things that I said and if they matched up and things like that. Um, and then, they really just were like, I really just need to know if this happened. And then what ended up happening after that was the police got involved, children's services got involved. I went to like a couple of counseling sessions and like things like that. So like that was like that full help that I had been missing. Like had this happened the first time and he had told me not to tell anybody, but I went to tell my mom, it wouldn't have gone as far as it did. It wouldn't have lasted the 2 years that it did. But because it lasted those 2 years, by the time I went to like ask for help, and honestly, me going to my sister was probably like my little body being like, I can't take this anymore. Like at this time, like I had like like nightmares. And it was like waking nightmares of like this person coming up the stairs in the middle of the night and coming into my bedroom. Like it was terrifying. And I think like literally my little 7-year-old body was just like, no, like something's wrong with this. Like, how can I get this out of me and tell somebody? And I wrote it in a journal, or in my diary. And I decided that I was going to read it to my sister. Like, I have no idea. Even to this day, I have no idea what possessed me to like read it to my sister. But my sister told, and my mom actually did something. And I know that is not everybody's experience. And I am so, so sorry that if that was not your experience, that you had to endure that for a longer period of time until you were able to get out. But I think that's really the case when it comes down to learned suffering. We sit back and think that we have to handle this thing called life alone. We have to handle these situations by ourselves. And in reality, when you look back at society and how things used to be, it used to be a village. Like people used to come together and talk to each other and help each other and be there for each other. And now it's almost like we've lost that because of the sense of power that we feel like we gain over somebody else for something that really, as a whole, like doesn't even fucking matter. And I'm not going to apologize for getting emotional because you guys are going to hear, if you're going to be here for the long haul, trust and believe, like this is going to happen often. But I say that to say that we don't realize how powerful we are together because we're too busy trying to be separate. We're too busy trying to be unique. We're too busy trying to have more than the other person. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. We are all out here hustling and bustling and doing our thing. Like, we are all doing that. What I'm saying is, for a lot of people, it is really about stepping on the other person to get ahead. And it's never about helping somebody else get to where they need to go. I remember I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I've read a lot of books, self-help books. I've heard a lot of people talk about how they get ahead in their lives and their jobs and things like that. And I remember either reading a story or hearing somebody talk about how they wanted to be the best at their job. It was a sales job. They needed to figure out how to like get their numbers up. And what they did was they went and sat by the people who were making more money than them, who were getting more bonuses than them, and they go and they listen to how they're talking and they would have conversations with them and say, hey, how did you get this person to buy this? Or how did you get this person to pay that? Or whatever it was. And these people would actually sit there and tell them like exactly what they did. Like they would give them the exact blueprint. And we don't have a lot of that now. We have people who are out here giving things, not giving things away because they want more of it. I don't think that I could work in I now at this point cannot work in a place where I have to like do collections. I did collections for many, many years. And afterwards I hated it, like so much so that I hated my phone. And, but I feel like if I had taken advantage of talking with the people in my group who were actually making more money, making more bonuses, doing things like that, and how they talk to these people, like I would have been able to be in those ranks. And it's so interesting when you think about the things that people need help with. Like, in all honesty, not all the time is it money. I think a lot of us go to money because a lot of times that's the one thing that's affecting our lives, like majorly. Like, we can't sleep because we don't have enough money. We can't, eat because we don't have enough money. And these are real things, right? Um, but there are a lot of times where we're just like sitting in our silence and not asking anybody for help, whether it's for somebody to go grocery shopping or somebody to put gas in our car or whatever. Am I saying that every time you're going to get somebody to be like, yeah, no, I'll definitely do that? Like, no, but you do have people who will be like, yeah, sure, no problem, I got you. And I think along with that learned suffering is when we ask for that help, being able to pay that person back. And I think that that also haunts a lot of people is once you help me, then I feel obligated to help you. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that either because I am also that way. Not in, I mean, I give back in a lot of different ways, but that's one of the things that also holds people back from asking for help. So I'm going to tell you another story because this just prompted another memory. I remember when I was I had just graduated from college. I had a full-time job. I had another part-time job at a bar. But I was not making enough money for like to live in general. Like I got to a point where I was like buying macaroni and cheese from Aldi. At the time, macaroni and cheese boxes were like 39 cents. I was also buying tuna fish, which at that time was only like again 39 cents, I think. And I was eating tuna casserole. Like I probably lost count of how many times I made tuna casserole because there was just nothing else for me to afford. I couldn't afford anything else. And I remember when I was with my ex-husband, we were actually dating and he lived elsewhere. And I remember calling him one day and just being so out of it because I did not have toilet paper in my bathroom. I ran out of toilet paper. And this threw me into the deep end of a spiral. And it was so funny because it's funny now because I think about it and I'm like, this was definitely one of those learned suffering moments. Like, by no means did I grow up poor. We didn't get a whole lot of things because my mom, she was a single mom. She was, she bought what we needed and that was it. If we needed anything extra, we'd talk to my dad or we'd go to my grandparents and get the things. But it was, it was definitely one of those things where like I always seen, we didn't have the money for things. So when it came down to it, it was just like, oh, well, I'll just go ahead and like wait until my next paycheck or, anything of that nature. Like I was just like, I will just do what I got to do and wait until it gets super bad. And I think again, in my particular situation, I think that's what happened. Things got super bad. For me in this particular story, it was the fact that I ran out of toilet paper, which now that I think about it is hilarious. And I now always keep toilet paper in my house because I never want to feel that again. Like I feel like you don't have toilet paper, like that's a low, right? As that, I'm pretty sure that you probably have no, like you don't, some people probably just don't understand that, but you have your toilet paper, right? You have your thing that if you were to go without it, like you would be like, that would be your low. For me, it was the toilet paper. Um, so I talked to my ex-husband, again, who was my boyfriend at the time, and he was like, well, why don't you call one of your friends? Like, why don't you call your best friend and tell her what's going on? And I was like, oh, because, whatever, and make up these excuses on why I can't call my best friend and tell her the things, right? And so he goes, no, he's like, go call her, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm not going to call her. I'm not going to bother her with my stuff, da, 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 da. So then we get off the phone. And at that point, I think what ended up happening was he had her number. So he texted her and was like, hey, you should reach out to Tay. And um, after like a few minutes, I got a phone call and it was her. And I was like, hey, what's going on? How are things? Whatever, whatever. We're like talking about all this stuff. And she goes, oh, nothing. Everything's good. This and that, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And then she goes, so what's going on with you? And I was just like, I sat in silence for a little bit and then I just started bawling. And I was like, I ran out of toilet paper. I don't have gas in my car. I don't have groceries. Like, I feel like I don't know what to do. And my friend was like, all right. She was like, no problem. She was like, let's go out. And I was like, okay. So she ends up coming over, she drives over to my house and she takes me to the gas station to fill up my gas tank. And she brought me a care package. And in the care package, it had like peanut butter and toilet paper and pads and just all these things that were like necessities. And then she took me to the grocery store and she bought me groceries. And I remember after that feeling so grateful that I had friends in my life who actually cared about my well-being and didn't want me to fail and didn't want me to starve and obviously wanted me to wipe my ass. Like, and it's so nice to have people like that. And at no point ever within our friendship has she ever came back to me and was like, yeah, so remember that time I bought you that stuff because you ran out of toilet paper? Like, she never did that. And I find that that is what I held to heart of my friendships, is that they're there for you, but don't expect anything back. And I'm not saying that obviously you can't give them things back. It doesn't have to be equivalent. I tell people all the time when it comes to energy exchanges, it's not about how much energy you're giving. If I come to you and I give you 100% of my energy, and later you decide that you want to give me energy back, it doesn't have to be in the same way. It doesn't have to be the same energy. It just has to be the energy of you and how you give that back to me. So whether that is my friend, she did that for me. She bought me groceries, she bought me toilet paper and filled up my gas tank. But then like later, what I did was I went over and made her dinner, or hung out with her because she was lonely or something. Like, I still came through as a friend to her. It wasn't in the same exact way, but it was in a way that I could give and in a way that she received. And I feel like a lot of times we lose that when it comes down to the giving and the receiving of things. It is really interesting when I sit back and think about it, about this learned suffering. And I feel like one of the things that I have changed over the last year and a half is asking for help. And the one thing that I will say is that I never ask for help to test someone. I am literally still in the midst of like the learned suffering, right? I don't like the idea of suffering being glorified. Like, I don't like that. My ex-husband used to think that in order for things to get better, you have to suffer, or in order for things to be great, you have to, like, in order for things to turn around and be great, you have to suffer. I always thought that was so freaking weird. Um, and in this particular situation, it really is like there are times where I will sit by myself. And it's mostly because like sometimes I don't need the help. Sometimes I just need to feel the feelings. But when I get to a point where things seem out of my control, or when things seem too heavy to handle, I will ask for help. I do this quite often, very often, because I'm an extrovert and the world is just now like, within the last couple of years, opening back up again. Um, is sometimes I get lonely. I get so, so lonely. And sometimes that in itself can be a suffering. And there are often times I don't tell people when I feel lonely. And it's because, for the most part, the people that I tell can't do anything about it, like in real life. Because usually when I'm lonely, it's because I don't have like that companionship. I don't have like somebody like next to me and we're like not hanging out or whatever. And I always forget, like, who can I call? Like, and I don't ever, it's still that like learned suffering. Like, I don't ever want to burden somebody with my shit. Like, I'm the one that's only like, I should fix it, right? But there are times where like I'll call my best friend in Georgia and talk to her and tell her that I'm lonely and we'll get on a Zoom call or something. And same thing with my best friend in Florida. Like, I call them, I'm like, oh, I feel so lonely as shit. And then they're like, let's get on a call and talk. Um, or I'll tell somebody who's like near me and they'll be like, hey, let's go out to lunch. Like, there's usually like no questions asked, which I very much enjoy. And I feel like a lot of times we miss the fact that we have people in our lives who actually do care about us, who actually do want to hear how we're doing and how we are managing life. And in real life, sometimes we are not managing life. Like that is just the reality of it. Um, I tell people all the time, like, my life sounds amazing. And trust and believe it is great. But sometimes it is a shit show. And sometimes, I mean, I have a friend who I talk to about like things that are going on with her, and she'll tell me and we'll have a conversation. And then she'll ask me how things are going over here. And I'm like, oh, things are good in this area, this area, this area. But this area right now is like a mudslide of ridiculousness. Um, and I remember one of the last times I talked to her, she goes, yeah, she was like, she said, I look up to you and I really like hearing that you're also human, basically. Because you never realize who's actually watching you and who's actually watching the things that you're doing, which is always so very interesting. But I say that all to say that you don't have to suffer. There is nothing romantic about suffering at all. In my situation, there was nothing cute about suffering through the abuse that I went through. Um, for anyone going through any situation, there's no amount of anything that says that you have to suffer in silence and that you have to suffer in pain. Like that is just so wild to me. And I'm pretty sure I know exactly where that comes from. That's going to be for another time, of course, but like it really hurts my heart to know that people feel like they can't talk to other people, or they feel like they can't be there for other people, or they feel like other people can't be there for them. So they suffer alone and they decide that no one cares. Um, and that's really hard. It's really, really hard. And I understand that. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to be an ear for people who are going through things in their lives and just want to talk. Like, I don't necessarily have to give advice. Sometimes I don't even give advice. Sometimes I just sit there and I listen and I cry with them and I hold their hand and I let them cry on my shoulder and all of that. And I have friends who let me do the same. But I think we have to change this idea of what suffering looks like and the fact that it does not have to be in silence. I feel like in 2024, gone are the days of us being silent about things that are happening in our lives. I think a lot of times we feel like we're going to be ostracized for what's happening, or we're going to get that, oh, why did they let that happen for so long? Or how did she get herself into that situation? Or how did he end up doing those things? And it's like, you never know somebody's life. You never know what they're going through. And the suffering that they are going through may be a learned behavior. It may be that they didn't have a support system of people who could help them through the things that they were going through. And now they're looking for that support and can't find it because we're too busy focusing on ourselves, focusing on the attention, focusing on the power. And in real life, we just really need to get back to the center, which is caring about one another and taking care of one another and just being there, just being there. And I know that we have so much shit going on in our lives. Like we have kids, we have families, we have husbands, wives, dogs, cats, elder parents, things of that nature that we're taking care of. But it takes nothing but a phone call or a text or something to check in on somebody and say, hey, I know that you're having a rough time. How can I help today? I will tell you this, every single time a friend comes to me and we're having a conversation and things are going a little bit awry, before I leave that conversation, I make it a point to ask, what is it that I can do to help make it better? And in all honesty, most of the time they say nothing. But I'm pretty damn sure that there will be one time where they'll say, you know what? I really need this. And I'll be like, I got you. because that's who I am. I am not that person who likes to sit in suffering. I try my damnedest not to sit in suffering. And I would hate for somebody in my life who I care about, who I love, who I talk to, even if it's on a very seldom basis, to feel like there's nobody in their lives that will help them. I leave you with this. I went on Facebook one day, and a Facebook friend of mine, somebody who I haven't talked to in years, came on Facebook and said, "Hey, I need help. I need help cleaning up my parents' house and getting everything straightened up and taken out of the home and sold and cleaned and things of that nature." And she put it out on Facebook. And there were a plethora of people who had said, "Hey, I can help. I got you. Let me know when it happened." Da, 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 da. And I sent her a private message and I said, "Hey," I said, "I know that you have a lot of people already helping you." I said, "But do you need any help? Any more help? Do you need any more hands?" And she said, "No, I'm good." She was like, I think I have enough people to help me out. If anybody falls out, I mean, I will let you know." Um, and then we kind of just like talked for a little bit. And I said, "Well, I'm glad that I could catch up with you." I said, "If you need anything else, since you have all the hands that you need to help you clean and get everything straightened up at your parents' house," I said, "if you need anything else," I said, "if you just want to go to dinner and talk, if you just want to have lunch, if you just want to go to the park, if you just want to go on a hike, just let me know." And I said, "I got you." And she thanked me, and that was that. And it had nothing to do with anything that she was going to offer me. It had to really do with, you are dealing with a situation that is hard, and you put out on Facebook to your friends and other family that you needed help. And I wanted to be there in some way, some capacity. So if you ever feel like you need someone to talk to, you can always give our line a call at 330-552-7234. If you are in a crisis or you know someone who is, contact 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline or dial 911 in case of an emergency. You can also chat with someone at 988lifeline.org. That's 988 LIFELINE.org. No one deserves to suffer. Period. End of story. End of sentence. No one deserves to suffer. So if you need someone, if someone you know needs someone, be there for them. Have your support system. Know the people that you can go to. And ask for the help that you need. Ask for that talk or ask for that toilet paper so that you can stop suffering. Thank you so much for listening to that episode. And before I go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my Trinity. And I'm going to do this after each episode. And the hope is, as I continue to do this podcast, that more and more of you will share your Trinities with me so that I can share them on the podcast. But for now, we will start with myself. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go and I'm going to brag about myself. And one of the things that I would say that I'm most proud of is the fact that I published my first book in 2021. That first book took me 6 years to write. And it was a miracle that it was published, honestly. So that is going to be my first brag. Something that I am grateful for. I am so grateful for my support system. I truly, truly have the best friends and the best family that anyone could ask for. And I am very grateful for that because I do realize that not a lot of people have that. And a desire, which is usually my hardest, and you'll find that over time. But one of my desires is that I want a way to show people that love isn't purely romantic and that it truly lives inside of all of us. And all we have to do is tap into that and give. I hope that you guys have a wonderful day. And if you like this podcast episode, please share it on your social media or share it with a close friend who you feel needs a little help regarding learned suffering. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you for listening to Dear Tay, You Got This. If you liked this podcast episode and found it helpful, please subscribe today and share this episode with a friend. If you have any questions, comments, wins, or would like to be featured on this podcast, please call or text 330-552-7234 or email info@desirablephoenix.com. See you next week.